Good morning, good morning, good morning. What a fantastic morning it is. Why? I'm glad you asked. The Creator breathed life into you this morning. He breathed life into me this morning. We are yet breathing this very moment, and I am breathing this very moment. And for that, we should be grateful. And it is a happy new day in spite of what's going on around the world. Welcome to day 70 of the Free to Hope presents the 12 steps applied to COVID-19. I am Edwina B, and this is the recovery conversation to share with you my experience, my strength, and my hope for 31 years, one day at a time, in a 12-step program of Alcoholics Anonymous. No, I do not represent Alcoholics Anonymous, but on February the 23rd of 2021, if God chooses to breathe life into me and wake me up, we will be celebrating 31 years practicing these 12 spiritual principles in all my affairs. Therefore, I know that I have been prepared. I have been blessed to sit before you to share my experience, my strength, my hope, and my wisdom. But I also have the experience of contracting and surviving COVID-19 with 7 other family members, and we all yet live, and we all yet are breathing. And for that, it's a great and happy new day. I know we're in a new year and a new month, but guess what? In the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous, we learned that every day is a holiday and every day can be a happy new day if we practice these 12 steps that are spiritual in nature in all our affairs. So we know, and if you don't know, hear me this very moment. Our Creator uses shattered, broken, and wounded people like me and like you to rescue shattered, wounded, and broken people like me and like you. And the Free to Hope is exactly what it says. Free stands for from recovery, emerge, empowered, to give hope to others, help others prosper equally, while we all simultaneously around the world deal with this COVID-19 and variants pandemic. But through the 12 spiritual principles, there lies the solution to these physical conditions by addressing them from a spiritual angle. So let's give 30 seconds of homage to our Creator, to those who have transitioned from COVID-19, those who are on their deathbed with COVID-19, those who are left behind as a result of losing loved ones to COVID-19, those who are suffering through it right now with the severity of the symptoms produced by COVID-19, those who have been doing a great job and not contracting and infecting others with COVID-19, and yet those who are still in denial, those who believe it's still a hoax, and those who believe it won't happen to them. So in other words, we need to include and give 30 seconds of silence to the entire human race, because it's only the Creator who knows the beginning, the middle, and the end of this pandemic, which is not the first pandemic man has suffered through, and it won't be the last. But for this time in our lives, there is a solution, and they are embedded in the 12 spiritual principles. So let's give 30 moments, 30 seconds of silence to our higher power, whoever you choose to call them, and those of us as a human race dealing with this COVID-19 pandemic. Join me. On behalf of the entire human race, I say thank you for joining me. All right, so right now, we know that this is day 70. If you want to see what COVID-19 looked like on me, go back to December the 3rd. As I set before you, transparent as I could possibly be. And if you saw my opening page, you saw two pictures. One with me, affected by COVID-19, and the process of where you see me now and the restoration, which is why the question needs to be asked. Are you in the prevention, intervention, or restoration mode of COVID-19, or are you proactive, reactive, inactive, or responsible regarding COVID-19? Only you can answer that question. But if you want to see me with COVID-19, go back to my podcast on December the 3rd. If you want to see the introduction of the 12 steps from April of 2020, go back to April the 1st of 2020 because of an article that was written by Dr. Scott T. Allison that I read on March the 31st. That is why I've been sitting before you for these few months, even though we are in a new year, in a new month, but this is a new day. And on CNN this morning, there was a gentleman who contracted COVID-19 in March of 2020. And he stated that although he survived COVID-19, he is yet dealing with the after effects of COVID-19. So even if you contracted and you survive it and depend upon the severity of the infection, there is still a long road ahead. However, if we apply after learning these 12 spiritual principles, we can use it from a spiritual angle to address any and all physical conditions. So let me first recognize my sponsors. As you can see, I have my mask on with Divine Light. And so my sponsors are F.R.E.E to Hope, LLC, from Recovery, Emerge Empowered to Give Hope to Others. Women Do Hall Transportation Services, LLC. Mr. C's Barbershop, he is responsible for creating my crown. Morgans of Delaware and Lady T at Morgans of Delaware are responsible for my attire and my Afrocentric attire. And Divine Light, the mask that I am wearing now, parallels with Dr. Carl Jung, Dr. Bob, and Bill W., that said those of us are dealing with the disease of alcoholism need divine intervention, divine providence. And it was God's infinite wisdom that later on I hooked up with an organization called Divine Light. So if you as an individual or a business want to be a sponsor to the cause, please cash app $F.R.E.E to Hope or contact me, edwina.bell@yahoo.com or 302-690-6679 for more information and more details, okay? But the reality of it is that we want to present this information to the public for free, and we will do that. And because it's free, we need sponsors to increase the platform so that we can get this information out to as many people around the world as possible so that they too can be set free and give hope to others. So if you would like to sponsor the F.R.E.E to Hope 12 Steps Apply to COVID-19, sharing my experience, my strength, my hope, and bringing on other individuals who have similar experiences, not just with the 12 steps of the programs in various areas, but also who have combated who have survived and those who were left behind as a result of COVID-19. So, in order to continue to expand this podcast, we need sponsors. So, if your heart is touched by these testimonies, if your heart is tested by these conversations, please yield to the Spirit and follow your heart and be a part of the solution and not a part of the problem by helping us to expand this podcast. All right. So now what we want to do is go to our next banner, and we're going to talk about how we got here. So let's go here and let's go to our next slide. And as I told you, Dr. Scott T. Allison was the one that I read in his article on March the 31st that talks about using the Al-Anon 12-step program, the same 12 spiritual principles, to address COVID-19 as we were asked to be on a lockdown. We're not in prison, but some of us thought it was, where the CDC asked us to quarantine and isolate during the month of April of 2020. And he came out with this article on March the 31st in order to introduce the 12 spiritual principles to the world as we combat this COVID-19. And his caption read, "How wisdom of the 12-step programs can help get us through April of 2020. Guess what? We're approaching April of 2021, and this information is still relevant. So go to Dr. Scott T. Allison in Psychology Today, March the 31st, 2020 edition, and read in detail his 7 points to utilize the wisdom of the 12-step programs from an Al-Anon approach. 1, letting go of control. 2, patience. 3, keeping the focus on oneself. 4, trust. 5, living in the present. 6, social connections. And 7, service to others. For those who need to be reminded what the 12 steps are and also want to see how we've been applying them to COVID-19, here they are. 1, we admitted we were powerless over COVID-19, that our lives had become unmanageable. 2, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. 3, made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood him. 4, made a searching and fearless more inventory of ourselves. 5, admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. 6, were entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. 7, humbly asked him to remove our shortcomings. 8, made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. 9, made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so will injure them or others, even you. 10, continued to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. 11, sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood him, praying only for the knowledge of his will for us and the power to carry it out. And 12, having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to others regarding COVID-19 and to practice these principles in all our affairs. So when we talk about changing the area of focus of the 12-step programs from alcohol, gambling, Sex Anonymous, Overeaters Anonymous, now we're applying it to COVID-19, and we can establish support groups called COVID-19 Anonymous, because if you saw all those 12 steps that are spiritual in nature, it will create, once we accept them, learn them, analyze them, evaluate them, and look forward towards the spiritual transformation that it's going to create, and addressing our old and existing attitudes, ideas, and behaviors as to why we think like we do, why we act like we do, why we say some of the things that we do, why we have some of these character defects that we do not want to get rid of and don't even acknowledge that they're character defects. Well, guess what? Those 12 spiritual principles will address all those issues from a spiritual angle in order to deal with this physical condition while we walk this journey on earth. As Donald Lawrence said, we are not a natural being having a spiritual experience. We are spiritual beings living and walking this natural experience, okay? And so one of the reasons why we keep showing the same things over and over every day as a review, as an overview, as a synopsis, as a summary, because we need to be reminded. We don't know when the student is ready so that the teacher could appear. We don't know who was just hearing, but now are listening. And one of the goals and success of the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous, which is 80 plus years old, the creator of the original 12 steps, is because we know that repetition is so important. We just never know when the student is ready so that the teachers could appear. And as a result of Dr. Carl Jung, Dr. Bob, and Bill W., they recognized that people with the disease of alcoholism needed a spiritual awakening through divine providence, through divine intervention, and with my sponsors, through divine light. So let me take this off so we can get into our discussion for today. And before we do that, let's take a drink. Not a drink, but a drink of coffee, okay? So I can breathe, I can smell, I can taste, I can feel, I can hear, but the goal of these recovery conversations is to listen. So when we learn, embrace, analyze, dissect, apply, and practice these 12 steps that are spiritual in nature, we will have the solution to the problem of reducing the perpetuation of COVID-19. All right, so we are on recovery principle number 5, which we are going to conclude today. At the end of our morning recovery conversation, I'm going to read the information from Jason Waller's breakdown of step 5. I used Jason Waller's entire template in breaking down all of the steps and the questions that he poses, right? In order for us to get a better understanding of why and how these 12 steps are spiritual in nature. So when we address our old and existing attitudes, ideas, and behaviors, and to ask ourselves not what's wrong with us, but what happened to us to make us so defiant, so rebellious, so stubborn, so self-centered, so selfish, so egotistical, so prideful, right? That we only think about ourselves and not our others, which is why I can share with you and ask you, because I had to share and ask myself what was wrong with me, that I was so defiant and so rebellious and took this COVID-19 for granted that I contributed to contracting COVID-19 and was responsible for infecting some of my family members as young as 2 years old up until 78 years old. So even though I had the information for over 30 plus years with these 12 steps, I did not apply them to COVID-19 originally. I had yet that attitude of being invincible. It won't happen to me. But guess what? It did. And it can happen to you. But we can prevent that by following these simple suggestions offered by the CDC. Wear a mask, wash your hands, social distance, get tested, and ultimately get vaccinated. And you will see during my little video of me getting vaccinated, before we go on to recovery principle number 5, which says we admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. But first, witness me getting the vaccine shot.
All right, here we go, my daughter. Got it? All right, put your Band-Aid on. We'll watch you for about 15 minutes. Okay. And then we'll check on you and we'll give you a date. In about a month, we'll call you. How about that?
In a month?
Yeah. All right, that's 28 days.
All right. Huh? See? Listen, it was done in this arm, and like they said, thank God I did not have any reaction to it. I didn't feel anything because I was used to getting needles during my addiction and my early recovery to address the STDs that I caught as a prostitute, and those shots helped save my life. And now that this vaccine is available for COVID-19, and I and members of my family had the symptoms that were related to contracting COVID-19, and compared to the severity of others who experienced those devastating symptoms of COVID-19, we had it good. We were blessed, huh? But we also need to recognize that the vaccine only decrease the severity of the symptoms should you contract COVID-19. Therefore, it will reduce the percentage of you being hospitalized as a result of the severe symptoms of COVID-19. And it will help decrease the possibility of you dying from COVID-19. So listen, do your research, do your homework, ask questions like I did. For those who had those preconceived ideas and those who have these various myths, guess what? Do your homework, okay? Look who's taking it. Look where they are being administered. So you do not want to be left out. It's not 100%, but guess what? Nothing in life is 100%, but taxes and death. All right, so I thank God that I took the vaccination to protect myself and the severity of the symptoms of COVID-19 and to prevent infecting other family members where possible. All right. So now that you've seen me getting the vaccine shot, I'll be scheduled in another 2 or 3 weeks to get the second shot, and I will share that with you as well. So let's get to our continuation of the 12 recovery principles, but now focusing on recovery principle number 5. All right. So because this will be the conclusion of it, I need to emphasize some things on this particular slide, okay? So we know that recovery principle number 5 states that admitted to God as we understand him, ourselves, and another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. And using Jason Waller's template, we know that the word admit or to be the cause, typically with reluctance. See, most of us are in denial about COVID-19. We don't want to believe that it really is what they say it is. And so in the case of it being true, but typically with reluctance, listen, let's dispel that rumor because it is real. I saw this morning that 2.4 million individuals have succumbed to the fatality of COVID-19, and that's only what is reported. So there are many more who succumb to the fatality of COVID-19. All right. So in dealing with our attitudes, ideas, and behaviors regarding COVID-19, the decisions and the choices that we are making regarding COVID-19, we need to look at question number 1. What do you believe is the importance of admitting your wrongs to another human being regarding COVID-19? I'll share with you what my experience was, right? 2, what do you think will be the benefit for this disclosure? I will share that as well. How do you decide to whom to share this information with? Listen, y'all can pick me. It doesn't matter. And 4, how does one get to the exact nature of our wrongs? And so we are definitely going to be talking about that even the more. And I will be using myself as an example. So let's go here to where we had a breakdown of my 4th step inventory, where we identified those character defects. And at the top of the list was resentment. And so in a 12-step program, they actually have us start with resentment to identify it as a character defect and determine who it is against, what the cause was, what feelings we had, what did it affect, and the part that you and I played in it. And so my resentment against COVID-19, it was against the creation of the virus. Why? Because it created uncertainty. What feelings did I had? I had feelings, mixed feelings, anger, anxiety, fear, and confusion, right? How did my resentment affect me? It affected my entire existence. And what part that I played in it? I only was one of the human race who was an innocent victim. But guess what? Because I told y'all I believe and I know for sure that I contributed to contracting COVID-19, and therefore I had a resentment against myself and the decisions and choices I made. So it is against my decisions and choices. I wanted to wear a mask when I felt like it. I didn't wash my hands consistently all the time. I didn't want anybody telling me who I could be around and things of that nature. I went to birthday parties, family gathering, public places, thinking and having that feeling of being invincible, right? Why? Because I took COVID-19 for granted. I was defiant. I was rebellious. I was stubborn. I was self-centered, right? And what feelings did it generate within me? Feelings of stupidity. Like Edwina, how could you be so selfish? How could you not take this thing seriously? How could you take it for granted? Seeing all the evidence, seeing the results and the tangible evidence that is and is happening around the world simultaneously, because they say in our 12-step program, some of us must die in order for some of us to live, right? So I had feelings of stupidity, anger, and grief. How did it affect me and my family? Well, members of my family from the age of 2 to 78 contracted COVID-19 as a result of my bad choices and my bad decisions. And it could have affected us in a different way. We all could have died. We all could have died. We did not have to be here among the living. If you want to know the feelings and the effect of those who have lost loved ones to COVID-19, talk with them and they will share with you their if I coulda, woulda, shouldas, what decisions they would have made differently, what choices they would have made differently as a result of their actions, and helping to contribute to the fatalities of family members, loved ones. But guess what? There is freedom for them too. There is hope for them too, because there are people who are yet behind that they can apply these 12 spiritual principles and now practice these CDC suggestions in all their affairs, right? And so the part that I played in it, like I said, I did not heed to all the CDC suggestions on a consistent basis. So now that I have identified the character defect of resentment, against COVID-19 and against myself, let's go over how we got to the exact nature of that resentment and as it applies to COVID-19 and myself. So I shared with you that the resentment against COVID-19, anger, right, was masked of that resentment. And then that anger was masked by uncertainty. And that was masked by confusion. That was masked by frustration. That was masked by disbelief. And I finally, with talking with other people as well as yourself, the exact nature of my resentment against COVID-19 was fear. My resentment towards myself, right, was camouflaged by stupidity. That was camouflaged by defiance and rebellion. That was camouflaged by selfishness. That was camouflaged by self-centeredness. That was camouflaged by regrets and remorse. And that was camouflaged by fear as well. It's the exact nature. And so we learn in a 12-step program that we either use the acronym for fear in a negative way or a positive way. And the negative way is to forget everything and run. Forget everything and run. Forget everything and run. That means ignore, be defiant, be rebellious, having denial that has denial, or we can use the acronym from fear in a positive way. And it says face everything and recover. Face everything and recover. And so that's why one day at a time, people like me in recovery stay sober. One day at a time, because we've learned to walk through the fear, address the fear, and look at it from a spiritual angle in a positive way with dealing with these physical conditions. We're going to face everything and recover, because in Alcoholics Anonymous, we learn not to give anything or anybody that much power ever again to take me back to drinking or to put me back underneath that park car 30 plus years ago. Oh, hell no. I'm going to face everything and recover because of these 12 spiritual principles. And I'm going to face everything and recover regarding this COVID-19 by taking the suggestions that are offered, washing my hands, social distance, wearing the mask, right? Getting tested, and ultimately taking the vaccine shot. So yes, I'm going to face everything and recover, so I can face everything and be restored, face everything and rebuild, face everything and rejoice, face everything and rejuvenate. Yes. And that comes from applying these 12 spiritual principles in all our affairs, including COVID-19. For that, let's take a drink, a coffee. Here's to the 12 steps and the CDC's suggestions. I can breathe. I can smell. I can taste. I can see. I can hear. But my goal is to listen. To listen. We want to be able to be a part of the solution to save your life, my life, to save the lives of your loved ones and my loved ones, to save and continue our culture, our tradition, our heritage, right? Our community, our city, our state, our country. And if we all do this simultaneously around the world, we can, we will, we must stop the perpetuation of this COVID-19 until our Creator says enough is enough. Until then, we are in this knee-bowing experience, and all of us is asking for help. Help me, help us. And He will. He can. He promised. But there are things we have to do. And it's one thing He will not take from us is our self-will. And through the 12 recovery principles, we learn how to align our will with God's will. And so you better believe, even though I didn't apply it the first time, because I through the grace of God, survived it with other members of my family. I'm applying them now, and I'm hoping that you are listening as well. So let's continue with the fifth step. All right. And we're going to go to the next slide that says, with Jason Waller, I told y'all I use his information, and he poses some questions that will help us see the need of getting involved and doing the 12 spiritual principles. But this is specific to recovery principle number 5. And we went through this. Go back to my previous podcast and you will get it in more detail. How long have I been living alone with secrets and wrongs? This addresses our feel. How do I feel about admitting our wrongs? My secrets to another. Well, if it's based on our old attitudes, ideas, and behaviors, we got some feelings about that. And that's the third one. Am you ready to share and let go of anything that hinders your acceptance, responsibilities regarding COVID-19? Until and unless we apply these 12 spiritual principles, we cannot fully be set free from recovery, emerge empowered, and we definitely can give hope to others. So that's why I love the questions posed by the collection of resources by Jason Waller and how he included his own experience, strength, and hope, and why I'm including it myself, of my experience, my hope, my strength, my wisdom, my lack of wisdom, my bad choices, my bad decisions, okay? And so similarly, we asked this question the other day: what reservations do you have about working your fifth step? All right. And so what we want to be able to do, y'all hold on a second. I'm getting some signals. I ain't trying to go off and I ain't trying to be disruptive. So I take my time and find out what that little message was. And that's the beauty of the 12-step program, and also the beauty of the Serenity Prayer, which we did talk about, and I will talk about again before this conversation is over. But what reservations do you have about working your fifth step? Well, if it's based on your old attitudes, ideas, and behaviors, these steps will help you address that issue and to ask that all reservations be removed regarding what you need to do for COVID-19. Let's go to the next slide. The next question that we talked about the other day was, can you acknowledge and accept the exact nature of our wrongs? So when we do our fifth step and we go through the exercise of doing that inventory, we will find, like I did in my example, how resentment, right, at the end of it, after the end of that iceberg, at the core of that iceberg that's submerged around the water, underneath that water, I learned that fear was the exact nature. So I acknowledged it and I accept the exact nature of my wrongs. And so when we talk about getting to the exact nature, that's where the freedom is, and we need to acknowledge and accept it. One of the things that they often say in recovery is that the sooner I tell myself the truth, the sooner I accept and acknowledge the truth, the sooner I can get better. The longer I'm in denial, the longer I refuse to accept, the longer I refuse to be made aware of, the longer it's going to take for me to get better if I live. Because some people want to put these steps off. They want to delay it. They want to postpone it. Well, guess what? Your life, my life, the lives of your loved ones can be at risk. Are you willing to do that? So let's see what else we have in terms of the questions. That was question number 3. Let's go to question number 4. It says, do I believe? Okay, let's put it up on the screen. All right. Do I believe that working my fifth step will make my life better? And if so, how? So we talked about this yesterday in detail, how you need to become a believer, even though the tangible evidence, the tangible items, the tangible experiences are out there in front of our face. We have to remove that reservation of denial so that we can believe. We can believe, right? That if I work this fifth step, I can address my old and existing attitudes, ideas, and behavior and incorporate these 12 spiritual principles. It will make my life, your life better. Yes, it will. And that's why it says, do I believe that working my fifth step will make my life better? And how? Listen, the fact that I am sitting before you, being as transparent, as honest as I possibly can, taking off all those other masks that kept me in bondage, kept me enslaved during my addiction, during the earlier years of my life when I had those negative attitudes, ideas, and behaviors, which caused me to make bad decisions and bad choices. Yes. But since I've been in this recovery process, 30 plus years, coming up on 31 years, you better believe my life is so much better. But let me tell you why. It's because of my acknowledgement, my acceptance of a loving and caring God as I understand him. Because when I came into a 12-step program, I did not have that attitude or idea or feelings about that God. Because I was taught as a child that God was a punishing God. You do bad things, God was going to get you. So why should I what? I might as well be bad. Do what I want to do. No. God, as I understand him, and as I learned by doing the 12 spiritual principles, that he never left me. I left him, but he is there, was there, will be there until he decides to remove this spirit from this temple. And as a result, you better believe my life is so much better. And the other reason it's so much better is because I am still an active member in my 12-step program. I go to my 12-step meetings every day in one way, shape, form, or fashion. I talk to other recovering alcoholics inside and outside of the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm still involved in 12-step work, 12-step calls. I am still sharing my experience, my strength, my hope, my wisdom as in any open and available form. Yes, because I've learned that in one hand I have my creator, and the other hand I have my 12-step program. And when and if I decide to let go of either one of them, I'll drink again. I know it. I'll drink again. But as long as I hold on to those two, my creator and these 12-step programs, I can use the spiritual information that I have gathered to any and all physical conditions on this journey called Earth. Everything else is dessert. But those two things, nothing else matters. Because I'm doing what my creator asked me to do, and that is stay sober and help another alcoholic achieve sobriety. Well, guess what? I want to stay COVID-19 free, and I want to help others obtain the freedom from COVID-19. So when they say practice these principles in all our affairs, I am doing that. So that's why I know my life is a lot better. As a matter of fact, it is absolutely unbelievable. But I like it. And I'm looking towards more of it if it's his will. All right, so let's go to the next question, all right? All right, so the next question is, all right, so now what we're going to be talking about now that you know the information, right? We want to ask you, once you have identified a person, we want you to set a time and a place to do your fifth step, when and where. And we're going to talk about that a little more as we conclude recovery principle number 5, because it's one thing to do your fourth step inventory like I did, but then making that appointment, scheduling that time to meet with my sponsor. But first it was a man of the cloth, and I'll tell you that story. But eventually I had to do it with my spiritual sponsor, right? And so even though you may say, yeah, this is exciting, I want to do it. Guess what? I'm from Missouri, and you should be too. Once you make the decision, and I hope you do, to do all of these 12 spiritual principles, but the ones that are actually asking you to do something, to do the work, to put the footsteps in, right? It's about action. The fifth step requires action. So set the time and the place for you to do your fifth step, okay? Now, the other question, number 6, that we want to ask, all right, is this one, okay? Now, once you do your fifth step, I just want to give you something to look forward to, questions you will be able to answer after you've done your fifth step. So isn't that beautiful that I can pose a question to you, knowing that you will achieve some type of spiritual transformation, no matter how uncomfortable or how painful. But if you see it all the way through, I'm going to ask you, has your relationship with a higher power changed as a result of working the fifth step? Do you hear me? Has your relationship with a higher power changed as a result of working the fifth step? Well, if you ask me and millions of others in recovery, we will say absolutely, adamantly, yes, it has changed and will continue to change. You know why? Because the one thing that we learn in recovery, and as Dr. J. Macklin said, is all about spiritual maturity. In order to obtain that psychic change and that's needed to be restored to sanity, and sanity only means soundness of mind. So when we apply these 12 steps, when we see how our lives have changed and changing the lives of our loved ones regarding COVID-19, we can, we will, we must stop the perpetuation of this pandemic. One person at a time, one family at a time, one culture at a time, one community, one city, one state, one country at a time. And if we do it simultaneously and in a holistic way, by washing our hands, wearing a mask, social distancing, getting tested, and getting vaccinated, we can, we will, we must. It is to some degree in our hands. So I'm willing to do my part. Are you willing to do your part? Are you? Are you willing to be in the prevention mode, the intervention mode, or the restoration mode of COVID-19? Are you being proactive, reactive, inactive, or responsible regarding COVID-19? This is why I'm having these conversations with you. Just to ask you these questions, just to pose you the information, just to present to you this information that was presented to me and millions of others regarding our disease of alcoholism, our problems with gambling, overeating, right? Drugs, right? Lust and all that. Well, the same spiritual principles can be applied to COVID-19. They work. All right, let's go on. So let me present that question again, It says, as a result of you doing your fifth step, and I want you to call me, I want you to text me, I want you to do whatever. So let me know how your life has changed as a result of working this fifth step. And I'm talking about your relationship with a higher power. Don't you know that all of us are simultaneously going through this knee-bowing experience, and each and every one of us have to cry out to the God of our own understanding. We have to have that personal relationship. Underneath that park car 30 plus years ago, I heard about a God, but I did not know him for myself. Man is limited. It says in our recovery, listen, I recognize that my life is unmanageable, right? That no human power could relieve me of my alcoholism, but that God could and would if he was sought. Well, underneath that park car 30 plus years ago, I heard about him, but I didn't know him. And I cried out, whoever they say you are, take me out this life now or show me a better way. And I haven't looked back since. So when I apply that same intensity, when I apply that same feeling of gratitude, when I apply that same feeling of help me to COVID-19 and do what is suggested for me to do, yes, I believe my relationship with the God of my understanding is superb, even as I still fall short. But there are 12 spiritual principles to help me with even that. Okay? So I'm looking forward to hearing your answer. All right? Let's go to the next question. As a result of doing your fifth step, all right? It says here, okay? As a result of doing your fifth step, let's see what it's going to say, right? Here we have, how has my view of yourself changed after working step 5? How has your view of yourself, myself, changed after working step 5? Can I share with you how the view of myself changed? I thought something was wrong with me. I thought something was wrong with me. Though my addiction, I couldn't stop drinking when I wanted to. I couldn't stop prostituting because I had to make the money. I had to get my drugs. Though my addiction, and even before I became addicted, I just kept lying. I kept stealing. I kept manipulating. What is wrong with me? What's wrong with me is what I ask myself, and what a lot of people ask me, particularly my family members. Edwina, what's wrong with you? And I would ask this God that I didn't know, God, what's wrong with me? But it was a discussion with Dr. Alvin Turner that said, Edwina, for years, we've been asking the wrong question. There's nothing wrong with you. There's nothing wrong with us. What we need to ask is, what happened to you? What happened to us to formulate that attitude, that idea, that behavior, those actions? What happened to you that make you think that you have to do this that way and do this way? What happened to you to make those bad choices, those bad decisions? What happened to you? And that's what the 4th step inventory does. Allow us to go as far back as we can remember to find out where those attitudes, ideas, and behaviors were first formulated. In what situation, what scenario, who was involved, what was the scene, right? What happened? I, through this 12-step program, was able to go back and rescue that little girl that I had left behind, that little girl that was still in here, but I didn't know where she was until I did my 4th step, and I found that little girl, and I went back and I rescued her. I asked for her forgiveness. I asked Is she okay? I asked that can I reunite with her? Because it was that little girl that was innocent, that was just a victim, that through life and life terms and all the things around it, things happened to her. And as a result, the other person came out who was defiant, who was rebellious, who was conceited, who was self-centered, who was prideful, who was rebellious, who had an attitude of being invincible. And that person was hardened until such time I had my knee-bowing experience underneath that parked car 30 plus years ago. And as a result, me and that little girl, we are reunited. And so when we think about, right, the view of myself changed as a result of this, doing this fifth step. I have learned, right, what happened to me. I apply these 12 spiritual principles in all my affairs to address what happened to me. I use the 12 spiritual principles in all my affairs to find out any and everything that I revealed, that I concealed, that needed to be revealed in order to set me free from recovery, emerge empowered to give hope to others, help others prosper equally. My view of myself, that I am work in progress, that the God that I now serve, I know he loves me in spite of my ignorance, my arrogance, right? My selfish ways, and he yet loves me, but he knows that he has put me on this path of recovery to the spiritual maturity, to the point where I sit before you transparent. I have no secrets. I don't mind telling you who I am and what happened to me. These pearly white teeth are not mine. They are dentures. You want to see proof? Do you still love me? Do you still love me? I'm glad God does. He doesn't care how I look. I don't care how I look. That's what the recovery program has done for me. I can take off all those masks and what? Put on the mask that's going to save my life, right? So look. You can't tell if I got my dentures in or not, right? So it doesn't matter. I know he loves me in spite of these things, right? Woo! Thank you, Spirit. Thank you. All right, so I ain't got but a couple minutes. Let me see what else I got to share with you. Okay, so your view will change of yourself when you've done the fifth step. All right, let's go to the next one. Okay, I think we got two more. Okay, this is the one, right? Okay, now on this one, it asks you when you did your fifth step, did you forget or omit anything? You know, we had a gentleman in recovery. His name was Joe Carr. That's what he uses his last name. He didn't mind. He kept something for 25 years that kept him sick. He didn't want to tell nobody this one thing, right? He refused to tell somebody one thing, and it kept him sick. And therefore, he could not be set free, right? And then one day, he decided to tell a stranger that one thing that he was concealing for so long that needed to be revealed. And he got a stranger and he told him, and he was set free. So when you do your fifth step, please don't omit anything, because you won't be set free as free can be. All right. So let's stop there. If it's God's will that I that we are joined tomorrow. Listen, let me put my little teeth back in. I'd listen. If it's God's will that he breathe life into you tomorrow, to me tomorrow, and he wake you up and wake me up for day 71, we will be reunited. In the meantime, the same question. Are you in the prevention, intervention, or restoration mode of COVID-19? Are you being proactive, reactive, inactive, or responsible for COVID-19? Only you can answer those questions. Until next time, please be safe. I want to once again acknowledge my sponsors, and we will definitely conclude recovery principle number 5 tomorrow. But I do want to acknowledge again my sponsors and encourage you to be a sponsor as well. Free to Hope, Women Do Haul Transportation Services, Mr. C's Barbershop, Morgan's of Delaware, Lady T at Morgan's of Delaware, and Divine Light. Contact me at edwina.bell@yahoo.com, 302-690-6679. And okay, we're now going to show you my vaccination just to show you.
Next to the top of you.
All right, so let's go to the beginning. I'm getting vaccine.
All right, here we go, my daughter. Got it? All righty. Put your Band-Aid on. We'll watch.
All right, so I'm going to put up my last slide to again acknowledge my sponsors and also to share with you that again I encourage you to be safe.